Hey everyone, I'm Daniel, and this is how I became a software engineer at 18. During the later part of my senior high school year, I started applying for junior development positions, and 9 months later I received an offer saying that I could start in September. Now you might be asking, how did I get here? How much prep work did I do? How could you have done the same? In today's video, I'll be answering all that and more. So here's an overview of what we're going to be talking about. I'll mark every section in the description, so feel free to skip to any part that seems most relevant. Now I'm not going to lie to you. It was definitely very tough, and a very ambitious goal. 50 failed late-stage interviews were what it took for me to finally match myself to an employer. Although the truth is, I didn't really match myself to anyone directly. I worked with recruiters that would match me to people, and I would basically have a constant stream of open positions once I had bolstered my online presence and I customized my resume to fit each one. Everything from the online skills, everything from the relevant skills that I showed, the parts of my projects I highlighted in the description, and the actual resume description of myself, I changed all of that depending on the job. Companies can usually tell when you're mass sending the same resume to other companies because it'll look generic and it won't match up to the job requirements as much as they'd like. Now, in order to actually send off your resume to recruiter broad positions, you need to do three things. Number one, you got to actually become an engineer. This is probably the hardest part. Number two, you got to build and grow your online presence as an engineer. If you're more technically inclined, this might actually be the toughest part because you got to go in front of the camera like I did. And last but not least, you got to establish some communication with other recruiters. In this video, I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn recruiters because that's the easiest type of recruiter that you can deal with. So let's talk about step one, becoming an engineer. There are many different types of engineering. Web engineering is the most accessible for most people because it doesn't require a degree or anything or any advanced knowledge. You could learn all of it on the internet. The end goal of this step is basically being capable of translating business requirements into technical requirements. That's a lot of jargon, but basically when the suits tell you that they need to get something done, you need to be able to brainstorm the basic technical requirements required to get that thing done. So an example that I have is a construction business owner telling you he needs to be able to show his work off on the internet to promote his business, because that's what he saw his competitors doing. Your job is to tell him that a simple website with some Google ads will do the job. Now, this is kind of a difficult step, actually learning how to become a web engineer. It might seem daunting at first, but you just put it into Google and you can see how many resources there are online for learning web development. So I started with Codecademy and Free Code Camp. Those are the two basic ones that I recommend to everyone. You can learn that stuff for free. Just learn the basics. And then when it came to actually building projects, I went all in on the following YouTube channels you can see here. Web Dev Simplified, Traverse Media, and the Net Ninja helped me create more complex projects. So there's like front-end stuff and back-end stuff. I use the YouTube channels for that. And there's so many resources online for learning web development. I personally started with Codecademy and Free Code Camp for the basics, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then I went all in on YouTube channels like Web Dev Simplified to create more complex projects. Some of these projects required more back-end work. So I used Traverse Media to move into back-end development with like APIs and Node.js, and actually deploying these things to become a full-stack engineer. All those words might mean nothing if you are not technically inclined yet, but that's okay because it's not that hard to learn. You just need time. Let's talk about feedback loops. So when it comes to setting a long-term goal and actually achieving it, you need a positive feedback loop that you can constantly loop through day after day. So basically for me, this was learning something from the internet, applying it in a personal project, getting stuck, trying to debug it, and figuring it out. Whether you do that on your own or you ask the internet or ChatGPT for help, you got to figure it out. And then once you do that, you've learned something from the internet. You just got to repeat this cheat code for several months and you'll eventually get somewhere. This is kind of the strategy that I used to learn all these technical things. People try to complicate it, but it's really just, this is how it is. It's this simple. When you're trying to learn something new, you just go through this feedback loop. So by the end of this step, you might have multiple projects built to reinforce the things you learned from the internet in that feedback loop after applying it in a personal project. So these projects don't got to be fully complete. They just got to be functional under optimal conditions. After all, they're for proving competency in a topic. Now, your learning projects might be different to your resume projects. Those are two different projects. One is just for learning how something works, and another is for actually proving that you know how something works. So when it comes to your learning projects, you might have a bunch of small projects that each individually show off a skill that you've learned. You might have some static sites built to show off your usage of Tailwind CSS and DOM manipulation. And you might have some server code built to show off your usage of APIs and path routing. Ideally, your resume project should be 1 to 2 big projects that encapsulate many of the topics you've learned. One good resume project would be a full stack app where you develop both the front end and the back end, and they work in tandem to achieve some goal. This basically shows that you know how to apply the stuff that you've learned, and at that point you can call yourself a competent web engineer, just not an employed one yet because you don't have a job. I highly recommend integrating some tooling from the big 3 cloud companies into your web app. For me, I did an SDK from AWS. It's kind of tough to do that, not gonna lie, but it will stand out on your resume, especially since many of the companies you're applying to are going to be using things like AWS, Google Cloud Platform, or Microsoft Azure. It's kind of advanced stuff, but with ChatGPT, it's a lot easier than it once was. So you don't really have any reason not to pursue this. Personally, I built something like an Instagram clone that used the recognition API from Amazon to classify the images that you uploaded to the social media platform. And it was really half-assed when it comes to the design and stuff like that. But the recognition part worked, the AWS integration worked, and that was the stuff that they cared about in the interviews. So that's an idea that you could follow. Now, growing your online presence as an engineer. This part might seem a little complicated, but it's really just a checklist you got to complete. You got to create accounts on the most important platforms like Twitter or LinkedIn. I recommend LinkedIn and Twitter. Both of them work together well. And you got to showcase your projects. You got to talk about the skills that you learned and how you used them. And you got to discuss your experience, how you got there. People, you might think nobody cares, and mostly nobody cares, but a few people will care. Some people that are behind you in terms of their experience, like maybe they are still learning how to code, but you already know how to code, right? So they would look up to you and see what your experience was like, because everyone's trying to learn something, right? And you can also talk to other engineers and tech people in the industry on LinkedIn and Twitter. You should ask them what they know, how they built what they built, and give them feedback on their stuff, because feedback is very valuable to everyone who builds something. It also helps to talk to other engineers and tech people online, because it can be kind of lonely when you're first learning how to code and stuff like that. You might find yourself facing a lot of problems that other engineers are also facing. So just getting to know them and their struggle and their experience, it can help you sort of gain confidence in your journey. Also, interacting with bigger accounts when they first post is a good way to get eyes on your profile. Now, another thing that's important is pimping your LinkedIn, because this is where you're going to find tech recruiters, and you should focus on this platform for that reason. There's another YouTuber, his name is D. Thompson Dev, and he has a great video series on this that I'm going to link in the description. Now, let's talk about tutorial hell. This is when you're stuck building project after project with no real career progress. So the only real solution to this problem faced by many aspiring engineers is to stop building. You've already built so many projects. Adding one more is not going to fix the problem. You need to start marketing yourself. You need to get your name under the eyes of recruiters, and you need to start taking interviews, because that's the feedback you need now. You don't need feedback on your projects per se or your technical skills. You need feedback on your interviewing skills. So start interviewing, start applying to jobs, change your resume for all those jobs, and this will hopefully get you out of tutorial hell. There's a lot of other videos that might explain it better than I did, so check those out too. This is not something you want to be in for very long. Now the last step, talking to recruiters. Recruiters have a bad reputation in the tech industry for being a little bit flaky, but just ignore them. You're going to have to deal with them anyway. First, recruiters will notice you when they're searching for technical people. Then they're going to skim over your profile and see what they like. They're going to see key details like whatever tech stack you're using and stuff like that, where you're based, whether in the US or not, etc. And if they like what they see, they'll contact you with information on the role that they're seeking to fill. So let's talk more about that first step. Recruiters noticing you. They're always looking for people to fill their technical roles, because people cycle in and out of jobs all the time. They usually have clients with very specific contract requirements. So they might be looking for specifically like TypeScript developers and not just JavaScript developers. They might be looking for Node developers, Vue developers, but not React developers, stuff like that. So when you eventually get technically skilled, make sure to put those technical skills in your profile so that they can see what you're good at, because this is what they're going to be looking for when they look at your profile, which is what they do here. When they see you and they like what they see, they will skim your profile to see what you're technically skilled in and that you're open to work and that you look professional. Obviously, if you are currently in a position, they might not send you an offer. Although they might. It's kind of 50-50, but they're more likely to send you a DM with job information if you show that you are open to work. And as for the last part, looking professional, just take a good picture and maybe use AI to skim over your profile and like all the wording and stuff like that. Make sure the grammar is right, basic stuff like that. You don't want to have anything that sticks out negatively. And last but not least, if they like you, they will contact you. So this will always happen through LinkedIn DMs if these are LinkedIn recruiters. So you need to check them every day. When you do get a LinkedIn DM, if you got your email set up with LinkedIn, they will send you an email as well. So you should also check your email. They'll tell you about the position they're looking to fill with a certain message. And this message will have the following information. It's going to have info on the recruiter and what kind of company they're from, the name of the company that's hiring, although they might redact that. They're going to tell you if it's contract or full employment, and the model, if it's remote or in-office work or hybrid, stuff like that. And last but not least, they'll tell you the technical details involving like the tech stack. They might also tell you what kind of developer they're looking for. And I don't mean this in the technical sense, but rather the seniority sense. They'll tell you if they're looking for a junior developer, intermediate developer, senior developer. Personally, if I were you looking for a junior job, nobody's really looking for junior developers. They're always looking for senior developers, but they're willing to take on junior developers if they can't find any senior developers. So I think you should just ignore that. Always take the interview and use the interview to see what the job is really about, because sometimes these messages can be a little bit misleading. So just keep that in mind. So what's next? If you like the job posting that they sent, you need to alter your resume to match the job. I mentioned this before, but basically look at the details that the job is looking for. Make sure those details are highlighted in your resume. And anything not highlighted in the job, anything they're not looking for, just drop that. Maybe don't take it off your resume completely, but make sure that the stuff they're looking for is highlighted first. Always make sure it's truthful. Don't lie to them, because they will find out during the interview, technical interviews, stuff like that, and you'll just be wasting everyone's time. So don't lie to them, but do alter your resume to match the job. After this, just respond with your updated resume and let the recruiter know that you'd like to set up a time to discuss the position further. Usually this will result in a one-to-one interview with just the recruiter. They'll talk about you a little bit more, you'll talk about them a little more, and hopefully if it goes well, they're going to proceed with more interviews. Technical assessments, I find, were part of my interviewing experience. Basically what they did after my interview with the recruiter talked to the people that were having the job. They sent me an asynchronous technical assessment, basically some bad code that I had to refactor and send back. And stuff like that. After that, we had behavioral interviews, technical interviews, and then I got an offer. I'm not sure how badly generative AI has affected the technical assessment part. It used to be a lot more async stuff back when I was looking for jobs, but nowadays it might be more like lead code stuff. Just be prepared to study up on that kind of stuff too. So after this, you should expect to fail many interviews, and take failure in stride. Failure is not a bad thing. It's to be expected before you can succeed. You only need one success. Okay, that's all it takes. One success. So failure is a chance for you to improve. After you get rejected from any interview, or at the end of any interview, you should just always seek feedback and try to figure out what you could have done better, what they liked, what they didn't like, stuff like that. It might get a little bit tough at the end, because nobody likes getting rejection after rejection. It's normal to feel bad after that, but you need to not lose sight of your end goal. Keep in mind all those TikToks of those tech workers who are the same age as me, who get paid for 8 hours a day to basically walk to work, get some coffee, code for maybe 30 minutes, then go down a slide and go back to sleep. That's what you're working towards, okay? Just keep that in mind, because you need some, whatever motivation you can get. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or anything you want to see from me, comment below or email me at that email. The slides will be in the description. And I find that you should save this video, because when I was looking for a job in the tech industry, I had a bunch of videos that I saved, and I would revisit them time to time to just focus on the goals that I was working towards. And these videos helped me achieve those goals that way. So yeah, thank you for watching my video. Have a great day, everyone.